Namaskar, and a very warm welcome to our listeners to a very special National Technology Day episode of Building for Bharat. Today I'm joined by my colleagues at Reverie, Mayuresh and Soham, and also a very special guest representing the next generation, Devanshi. Today we will talk about the generational shift in technology and how languages play a key role in that. Let me start a bit about role of languages while I was growing up, and I would certainly like to hear from you. How has been your experience as well? So I studied in Kendriya Vidyalaya, and my entire schooling was in Kendriya Vidyalaya. Now, when I look back, Hindi and Odia is these are the languages. So Odia, of course, is my mother tongue. Hindi and Odia, these are the languages I used to speak with my friends at school, college, and outside. And predominantly Odia at home with of course parents, my brother, and family members. English, if I recall, it was only in the classroom and restricted to education. So, if I have to summarize the role of languages while I was growing up in my life, it has been a fair distribution of languages, English for education and professional purposes, and Indian languages, which are Odia and Hindi, for my personal interactions. So, Mayuresh, Soham, either of you, if you want to share your experience with languages, it will be interesting.
Sure, Arvind. For me, I grew up in a state board school, so it was a Marathi medium school. I grew up in Bombay. So English was, secondary language, and it was a language we would get good marks. Marathi would be really, being a primary language, would be really tough. The first time I kind of fell into this dilemma of having to struggle with knowing other languages. I kind of grew up until I was 16 in Mumbai. Is when I moved on to junior college, where everything was being taught. Even English and science, I learned it in Marathi. And being Gen X, I think that would be the case with many of us. But when that happened, literally for first 2 months, I was completely shut. I couldn't speak a word. I still remember this little incident around the same time. One of my cousins, he wanted to go and enter some, aptitude exam for some training school, and he dragged me into it. I scored real good marks in that, and then they called me for an interview. And the interviewer, I mean, this was even before I started 11th, he started talking to me in English, and I just had no way to respond. Okay, I was kind of in the top 5 guys, but I couldn't just answer anything, and that almost shook me, but the first 2 3 months, struggled hard, moved into English. And now that I think about it and look back, it almost sounds like crossing a big chasm, and once you cross, you are in a different world. Then you don't think about that world. Then you don't really connect or recognize what it is like to be in that world, right? Since then, for me, it's been whatever technology. I studied engineering. I worked with a lot of multinational organizations, managed teams outside of India. All of that great, but I always felt that that connect was missing. And once you kind of cross that chasm, you are in a different world. You don't care about them. And on this technology day this year, it's a good time to step back and sort of reflect that while technology is supposed to solve problems in all the aspects of our lives, and has been doing that successfully in pretty much everything else, in India, Indian languages are still, at this dark spot, where they are still trying to, come out of that. There's very little content out there and stuff like that. I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But, for me, this has been my journey with languages, and, crossing the chasm.
Mayuresh, this is very interesting, and I can assure you that you are not an exception. And I have come across two kinds of people who have been through similar experience. One is the ones who started with their education in local language and then they switched. But then there are also a lot of people who could not make that switch. And so, Soham, what is your experience? You are relatively, I would say, a generation apart in terms of what you have been through. So it would be very interesting to know your experience with languages.
Sure, Arvind. So in my childhood, like I have lived in a lot of cities, and I've changed schools a lot. So, I started, I think, learning Bengali first, and then I studied English, and then Hindi, and like then I got an option to study Sanskrit. So I studied Sanskrit for 2 years, and then I went to college, and then there I studied French. So it's like I studied a lot of languages here, and it's because of changing so many cities and so many schools, and then coming to a different place and in college as well. So the thing is like one is like I got an opportunity to learn so many languages, and second is like there was a lot of things happening at the time when I was growing up. So it was like a huge technological shift which I can see, because before ninth, 10th, like we didn't even had mobile phones. And I think coming to 11th and 12th, I had a not a smartphone but a mobile phone. And then I went to college, and then I had a smartphone. And now I have, like like we all have smartphones right now. So it's like from no mobile phones to surrounded with technology all around you. So it's I think technology played a big influence in our lives as in like being millennials. And second thing is, I think cinema, OTT, this played a huge influence in our lives. Like I've been, watching, a lot of movie channels where we used to watch this South Indian movies, mostly Tamil and Malayalam and Kannada movies and all. And that kind of influenced a lot in my life, because later I kind of started watching Tamil movies, and I wanted to watch those movies in their own language. And then I came to know about this superstars in the South Indian industry, like Dhanush and Rajnikant. So there was a big influence, coming like this technological shift, and then this OTT and the cinema that we have around.
So Soham, it was Dhanush for you. For me and my generation, it was A.R. Rahman. We started listening to his Rosa songs, and it was a big deal to know the entire lyrics, Tamil lyrics of his, first few movies. So I really connected with that. Thank you.
And I was introduced to Bengali songs by my grandfather. Okay, and I used to listen. I still listen to Bengali songs, although I don't understand those. Bhupen Hazarika is one of the favorites that he introduced, and I still listen to Bhupen Hazarika songs. Soham, very interesting. And you mentioned about not just the languages. So your experience with multiple languages. You also mentioned one interesting thing about you saw the shift of how mobile phones started and then into smartphones. And after that, now you also mentioned about content, right? So this is a very nice blend of language and technology. So both Mayuresh, you and Soham, it's not just what we are working in Reverie on language technologies, but also because of the background that you have in experiencing different languages. You have had your personal experiences that makes it very interesting. So let me go back to the time when we started Reverie Language Technologies and what exactly happened. So this I'm going back to 2009. And Soham, like you rightly said, that was the time when mobile phones were starting to get mass market. And smartphones, smart devices, Apple, I still remember around that time they had introduced their first iPhone model. Android had come up with its first operating system, which was, I think, Froyo, the first operating system before Gingerbread was a commercial success. That was in 2011. Now, and of course, other than that, there were so many proprietary operating systems. Qualcomm had its Blue operating system. Nokia, Samsung, everybody had their own operating systems. But what was interesting is that hardly any phones in India that had support for text display or input. And if someone could actually send message somehow with great difficulty to through SMS, SMS was the medium of texting at that point in time. It was no guarantee that the receiver would be able to see that message, right? So it was unfathomable for us, the founders of Reverie, to comprehend that in our own country, in India, compared to English, our languages were getting second class treatment, and phones didn't even have the basic infrastructure to be able to support that. So that is how it all started. Is something that we will really talk about, but I would like to understand from you that, so this is how it all started. From there, right now we are more into user engagement. We are leveraging all the technology that are applicable to both video, voice, text. And then we, despite the fact that Indian languages, Mayuresh, you spoke about the fact that there is not much of data. So, despite the fact that there is so little data available in Indian languages compared to English, we are still focusing on the latest trends using artificial intelligence and machine learning, and also the recent trend, which is about generative AI that everybody is talking about. So, given your background in language, your passion for languages, how are you blending that in the technology that we are working together in Reverie?
Okay, so this is what I think. Like I said, once you cross that chasm and come into this English world, everything is English. And as a techie growing up into this ecosystem, when everyone talks about language, everybody understands that language being a programming language in the technology world than the real world human languages, right? So actually the situation is that bad that English is now a de facto standard to work with a computer, right? So in the technology world, you are language means different programming languages than real human languages. It's only when you build products or solutions off of that technology, which are interactive with users, is where the language comes from. So in a way, it is. For anybody who doesn't understand really good English, it's a non-starter for him to become a technology guy or start coding, because that's completely assumed that you have to have that. And the interesting thing that I feel about this is that if you look at it, Sanskrit is a most kind of strictly typed, not very confusing or unambiguous language, which is actually a way better candidate in terms of having built any programming language on top of it. But nobody thought about it, because when all of these languages were created, nobody knew Sanskrit from where it was created, right? So while I sort of grew up, on my journey, there were obviously a lot of these cross connections, with us being in India, where there is always a constant, language, connect or a cross connect and stuff like that. You will come to believe that it would have been much better if, let's say, computer programming languages were built on top of Sanskrit, for example. Or we are not doing anything for those people that have still not crossed the chasm. They are still struggling because for whatever reason they don't have access, or whatever else needed to then come into this English ecosystem. And it almost seems like we are forcing them to do that in order to in order to be whatever successful in this world, or in our country also, which is unfair, right? Now, coming back to again technology and the evolution of say cell phones, I think before that computer was still kind of a business. It was used in business interactions. But when the phones came in, a lot of other interactions started to happen. That is where technology was needed even more. People were trying to connect with each other real time through devices and then expecting responses. That's how WhatsApp became successful. Facebook came in and stuff like that. In spite of that, I feel, and also Unicode happened, right? All of those technology pieces happened, but everybody assumed that we don't have to do any work, on other languages. And it is my kind of a belief that that happened because those who are already in this world are moving forward, and those that are on the other side are because they don't have access to technology, because it doesn't work on English, they essentially have very little avenues to cross the chasm. And that is the disconnect we have, in our ecosystem today, which I think needs to be bridged. And I'm glad that all of us have this opportunity in front of us. We are building the technology and solutions to bridge that gap, to essentially, with generative AI, as you said, we are now building, or allowing that audience to now generate new content than yeah you know than rely on translations only.
So, Mayuresh, this is you touched upon various aspects of how technology is touching the users' lives, and there are many use cases that we hadn't thought of and we have discovered. So, we are going to spend some time on that one. But before that, Soham, how do you see language blending with technology?
I think in the internet, like we see everything in English. Like I think internet is kind of designed completely in English. Like coming to the presentation, looking into the websites or mobile apps, everything is in English, as well as what we code, right? Even coding is in English. So English is properly, it's blended in the technology we have. But I think right now we are having that shift everywhere, not just in India, but all over the globe. And I think there are a lot of technologies that is helping in that sense. So if you see, a lot of websites are providing, content in different languages. Even the government websites, which you see, uh, it's available in every regional language so that everyone can use those websites and um, understand and make an informed decision. As well as you can see like today's startups also, if you open Zomato app or if you see the Mintra app, you will see an option to change your language in those apps, as well as mobile interfaces. I've seen, one of the delivery boys or the security guards had seen like their whole mobile phone is in Hindi, right? So I think right now there's a big shift that has happened, that you can find all these technological interfaces are available in different languages. And obviously this comes, there's a lot of challenges that comes here, and it's been getting solved. Like we have technologies like, text to speech and speech to text and translation, transliteration, language identification. So, combining all these technologies together, there are a lot of products, and like those are getting created for different use cases. And yeah, I mean, that is happening right now.